everybody, I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
We are Armchair Directors. Oh, wait a second. I'm confused here.
Yeah,
I think
we're on your channel right now.
I got mixed up here. Welcome to Toy Guys Talking. We are back from a short hiatus, and speaking of hiatuses, how do you like that for a segue? My good friend, longtime friend, Matt Crandall is back from a hiatus as well from his solo channel, which is now called CineMATTic Crandall. Used to be called Crandall Reviews, so you're back at it. And we've been doing, for folks out there who don't know, we've been doing Armchair Directors, discussing movies, TV shows, for a long time. I think we started in 2010, and we haven't talked about toys very much on the channel. We're both huge movie fans, but it's cool to be able to just talk about toys for a change. Yeah,
I think it'd be awesome. And you know, we are just huge movie fans and have been doing Armchair Directors. The 10-year anniversary is coming up in January.
Oh boy.
So like it is almost a full decade, which is crazy.
Wow. I guess we should do a top 10 of
maybe.
The 10 years.
But you are in the toy museum behind you, the beautiful toy museum.
Yeah.
And
you actually got to see this back in its infancy, embryonic stage. I remember you were over for an Armchair Director shoot, and it was a disaster. The whole room was like, it was the old crappy gray office carpet, and the walls weren't painted, and there was just boxes and wonderful things, wonderful collectibles, but just it was a disaster. So you got to see it before this.
It was in the infancy, like you said, but you have now nurtured it and grown it into something incredible that I'm sure anybody who's watching your solo channel absolutely knows. You got the best toys out there, man.
Well, thank you very much. So, we haven't, like I said, we haven't talked about toys very much. What did you grow up on? Like, I know you are a little bit younger than me, a lot more mature. But what like tunes did you grow up on, and did you collect any of the toys from those shows? Yeah,
mostly, you know, He-Man was a big one for sure. So Masters of the Universe, collected those. Star Wars, because I had a cousin who had a bunch of Star Wars stuff that got me into the toys before I got into the movies, which of course then became like
so that would have been early 80s then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, because I just saw the other day at Toys R Us Canada, which we still have Toys R Us here. I feel like we're going to be saying that for 30 years. We still have Toys R Us in Canada. There's still going to be people who aren't aware of this. But I just saw the vintage Kenner reissues of the Star Wars figures at Toys R Us the other day. Did you have any of those when you were growing up?
I did. So like, you know, and various of the originals that, of course, around like 1988 or something got tossed out when I moved from Ontario to BC, and now you're just like, oh my gosh, I wish I had them. And I still got, you know, now that I'm older and have reamassed some of the retro stuff, you know, like the Darth Vader carrying case full of figures and stuff. But oh man, I had tons, especially because they were hand-me-downs. My cousin Ian was really into Star Wars, but then when he didn't really want the figures anymore, I inherited a lot of them, just because he, you know, that when you're like 8 or 9, you're like, oh, I'm taking a break for a bit, or you're switching to something else. He got more into movies rather than toys, and I was still loving all the toys.
Yeah, the world wants everyone to grow up, and I vividly remember that when I was growing up. Aren't you a little old for that? Just constantly, as you're coming of age, you're peppered with these messages of it's time to grow up, it's time to get mature. And you go along with it, right? Because young, impressionable minds are, I guess, to some level, they're aware, like, I need to learn, I need to grow, and you listen to what I realize now is bad advice.
Right.
So that's why there is such a huge collecting community, and everyone regrets getting rid of their old stuff, but I think you got to also look at the positive side of it, the thrill of the hunt. You wouldn't have this excitement of hunting this stuff down.
You're right.
Especially when it comes to repros. Yeah, the vintage stuff, especially mint on card, mint condition, can be really expensive and painful to hunt down. But you go to your Toys R Us or you go to Walmart. You were at Walmart the other day. I saw the video you put up on your channel. And you find they're new figures, but they're on the vintage style cards for a couple bucks. So that's the thrill of the hunt that you would be deprived of if you didn't get rid of all of your stuff back in the day.
Right.
So that's a positive.
Yeah, they can now sell it to me all again. And Yeah, so I was really into that kind of stuff. And of course, because I loved movies, real Ghostbusters figures, I had a bunch of those. And
Show was the best.
And then was totally obsessed with the Ninja Turtles in its heyday.
Yeah.
And a million of the Playmates Ninja Turtle toys. And then as I got older, still more movie stuff like the Jurassic, and of course Transformers and Rock Lords I was into for a while.
Wow, I didn't realize you had that much like vintage stuff, but you don't have most of it anymore, right?
Some of it I still don't have. Some of it is still in a garage in a box, but
I know. That would be an awesome video, man.
I was gonna say I gotta unbox some of it. It's just I've got limited space I'm working with. That all the new toys that I'm buying are just overflowing. That it's tough to dig them out sometimes.
I just had an idea. I would love if you would find that to be a guest on your channel, and like it's an unboxing, but it's not like a unboxing unboxing the sail barge, but unboxing like a hidden buried treasure.
The old crap from the attic is getting unboxed.
Let's not crap.
Yeah, they would be. It would probably be a mixture of treasures and garbage, but there may be people out there who have been looking for that thing that I don't care for anymore. You never know.
And one of the most satisfying things that I've had from doing these videos is, what is it, ASMR or something like that? There's auto simulated something. I can never remember. I can never commit to memory what it means, but it's basically, it's like a first person video game. When you're showing something off on a YouTube channel, the other people get to kind of enjoy that virtually, right? Through what we're doing. So movies is one thing, that's giving an opinion. That's like Siskel and Ebert style of, an endorsement or a warning. But with YouTube reviews, that's one of the really cool things about doing it. Like some people can't afford it or they just can't find it, but you can still, to some degree, enjoy it. Just by, watching the guy and, or gal moving it around in their hand, showing little details off. And I'm still doing reviews for things that are 20, 30 years old and finding new details. Like, I never realized that was right there.
Well, and that's so awesome. I love watching your channel to see some of the toys that are long gone that I don't have anymore, and seeing you do that stuff. And it's like, oh, it brings me right back to when I was 8 and I had those toys. And, I'm not going to be able to track all of them down. So it's fun to do that. And then, of course, you mentioned that we still have Toys R Us in Canada. So when you watch the videos of at Toys R Us, there are lots of people now who don't have access to Toys R Us that you get that same thrill, which in Canada, I love Blu-rays and stuff. And our Blu-ray and DVD sections at most Best Buys has been decimated.
Oh, yeah.
So every once in a while I'll log on and watch somebody just hanging out in a Best Buy in the States, and it's like, there's so many steel books, I can't believe it. Yeah. And that's the same thing. It's, you live vicariously through others, because sometimes that's good enough to get you that nostalgia thrill.
I really wish, talking about like DVDs and stuff, you don't miss something until it's gone. I wish there was, maybe there is some footage, I haven't actually looked, like old footage of walking through a Blockbuster video. Just because you take it for granted. You go there every weekend and you get your movie, and then it's a dread to go back and return the movie, and I hate it. But it would just be cool to, one more time be able to walk through. And I've often looked for old videos of Toys R Us from the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And there's like one or two on there. Somehow someone smuggled that big Marty McFly JVC big VHS.
They got it.
Yeah, they got it in there, and they're in there. They're walking through a Toys R Us like late 80s. It's discreet, right? They can't show everything off, and there's a few pictures here and there. And I love seeing that stuff. Unfortunately, there isn't more of it around.
Especially because back in the day when they opened a new Toys R Us, that was an amazing event where they had special guests. And I think I mentioned it on our show one time, and it actually ended up being, there's a Simpsons episode where the exact same thing happens. That one time my dad took me to a grand opening of a Toys R Us because Mr. T was going to be there in Mississauga.
Yeah.
And we literally got to the event as the A-Team van was like pulling away, and Mr. T had just left after like signing everybody's action figures and like meeting everyone. And the same thing happened to Homer Simpson in an episode of The Simpsons where he just missed Mr. T at some big event. And I always think back to that Toys R Us in Mississauga that we got stuck on the 401 on the way to it and missed out. But those are things that I wish that there's more videos of when they used to open a Toys R Us. It used to be a big deal.
Yeah, like a theme park opening. And I remember someone on my channel here mentioned in the Mississauga area, Toronto area, David Hasselhoff came out to one of them as well. You know, the Knight Rider was there as well.
Yeah,
so
Knight Rider himself.
They went all out. And a couple of years ago when I started doing the toy videos, you know, I said I built my own Toys R Us because even though Toys R Us hadn't closed down worldwide, the Toys R Us that was in my town here and the ones that I would see in surrounding towns, it just wasn't the same. I mean, it was still there, but it was, I guess, to use an expression, a shell of its former self. And I decided, like, it's not, you know, what's on the shelf, it's who's on the shelf, and all of my old favorite characters are gone. So it's just, it felt a lot more corporate. And that's totally changed since the closures in the States. It's like a free reign. It's like a fresh start or a reboot or a refit, I like to call it. It's a refit. Yeah. And the Toys R Us that we have now here in Canada is night and day, like night and day from how it used to be before the US closure. So they bring in exhibits like these big Lego statues. Yeah. Did you get to see the Lego statues that were in Kitchener?
I was gonna say, I did see a couple of them, and then the ones that I didn't see, I saw on your Insta.
So they had Spidey and a giant Thanos with a light up Infinity Gauntlet, and they've brought other stuff too. I've been in another Toys R Us in another town where they had like a big Jeffrey. So nice. It's the new Jeffrey, but it's still like a big Jeffrey that you can look up at and take pictures with. And they always have other like interesting things. They had a big dino at another Toys R Us for Jurassic Park, like a giant T-Rex.
Yeah.
And also these little stations around the stores where little kids can try the toys out and play with them with their hands. Because I guess, you know, everyone is saying like kids today aren't interested in toys. They want tech. They want digital.
Yeah, they want the app.
They want it in their hand and they want to play around with it. Well, that's the best strategy ever. Like,
yeah,
you know, if you just see a picture of a toy or seeing hanging on the peg, it's like, what's the big deal? Who cares? But then when it's actually there and you pick it up and it moves or it talks or it barks or something, it's like, whoa, that's infinitely better than an app. So, so big difference.
And that's like back in the day when we were growing up, you know, somebody would bring some toy to school and during recess, you'd get to play with it for 5 minutes. Yeah. And then it was like, I got to get that because just playing with that for 5 minutes was so amazing. And it was just that you actually, you know, had it and you did the battle damage to the guy. And like, you're like, I need this.
Yeah. And then, back to school. So I wanted to ask you, because this is, I guess, a hot topic. Everyone always wants to know everyone's opinions on reproductions and repros, and I have a pretty good feeling of what your opinion is going to be. But with those repro Star Wars figures coming out, the reissue ones, and any other toy, the reissue Transformers, if you see one at Walmart of one of your original beloved Transformers and it's half or 1/10 the price of what it goes for on eBay, what do you think of reproductions?
In general, I kind of am all for it, only because the cost is so much lower than tracking down the originals. Now, even these reproductions aren't quite exactly the same as the originals half the time.
That's right.
There's something, either the build material or something is just like a little off.
Yeah, it's either like an intentional change, like the Star Wars reissues, they've mucked up the edges. And it's in the printing. They didn't have a guy actually go with steel wool and go, I got the worst job in the world. But they've done it intentionally, or it's like the build quality is 2019, not 1984, which you know is lower.
So it's one of those things where, like, I do think that for a lot of collectors who won't ever track down that holy grail, it's kind of awesome that you can get a nice reproduction that's sitting on your shelf is still going to give you that feeling when you look at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, those Star Wars retro things, half of those I haven't seen yet in person. So when I saw you post it yesterday, I was like, I got to go to Toys R Us like tomorrow and see what's going on with some of those vintage retro reproductions, because I got to get them.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's I'm so happy for people who get to have the repros. And that's that. I mean, that's the end of that. And I used to try to see the other side of it, but I don't really anymore. I'm too happy for the people who have always wanted this stuff and can't afford it. And so that's awesome, man. Like it's it's what it's intended for. And it's like, you're a big steelbook collector, right?
Right.
How would you feel, and you got an amazing steelbook collection, how would you feel if they started reissuing the steelbooks? There's a little part of you that's like, no, right? The value is decreasing. But I'm guessing there's probably a part of you that's like, that's awesome for the people who always wanted those.
And they have done that a little bit. So there was a Future Shop exclusive of I Am Legend that never came out anywhere else. And then about 5 years later, Warner Brothers released it everywhere. And so it went from being worth like $400 to being worth like $450. And, yeah, it's maybe a little bit deflating, but I think the nice thing about the toys is that there is still going to be somebody, if you really got into financial straits and had to sell it, who's going to want the actual original, right? Because there's nothing like, even like you said, sometimes it feels too 2019 when you actually are playing with it.
Well, there's purists, right? I would think that would also apply to steelbooks, Blu-rays. I'm a little surprised they plummet that much, because there's this mentality these days. It's purist, right? It's the meticulousness. It's the attention to detail. It's about the things you can't see. It's like when a collector has a mint in box thing. It's mint in box. Let's say it's to go back to Star Wars, it's a mint in box X-Wing.
Yeah.
Right? Or Millennium Falcon. Mint in box Millennium Falcon. There's no windows on that thing. There's no there's no big window like they have today of here's...
Right now in my closet, I have a mint in box Empire Strikes Back Dagobah playset.
Wow.
From the 80s that's never been opened, but the box is glued shut and only has a small little slit like this. So like, I don't honestly know if it's mint in box or if it's even the Dagobah playset in that and somebody didn't reseal it and just make it feel like Dagobah. So like, that's one of those things. Yeah. Right.
So that's where toy collecting has kind of, to me, it's kind of funny that it's become like archaeological treasure hunts, when it's always been about children's toys, fun toys, play toys. They can be, for grown-ups as well. I've always loved just the representation of something that I love, whether it's a TV show or a movie, in my hand. But like, it was never intended to be mint in box forever and ever.
Right.
And it's not a Ming Dynasty vase, or some other, like, it's not a sarcophagus that you can leave sealed and go like, this is legit. I mean, this is hundreds, thousands of years old.
Yeah.
We don't know what's in it, but like, it's gotta be thousands of years old. Like, we've done our testing and it's legit. Dagobah playset, like, it's a toy. It was mass produced. There's thousands, and like, how many hundreds of thousands were made, even if it's still rare and kind of hard to find.
Oh yeah.
There's hundreds of thousands, right? It's not like a vase or a mummy or something like that. Like, we're talking like a corporation made
this,
tons of these things. And so, there's always going to be people who want the knowledge of, yes, it's mint in box. I know that's the year it came out, or with a steelbook, this is the year it came out. It says on the back when it came out, right? Like, what year. So even if it's a teeny tiny thing, even if it's identical in every way to the new steelbook, it's that little date on the back. I know that it's the first issue.
This is the one.
It's like a first printing of a comic book, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. What's the difference between a first printing and a fifth printing? It's the same comic book, but it's that I know.
Yeah.
The problem with mint in box is scammers, right? Thieves. Like, how do you know what's in there? And if you bought it from the store, or someone you trust says, look, I bought it from the store,
right,
then it's pretty safe bet that it's legit. But there are a lot of toys being sold on eBay or at toy shows and stuff, and they go, it's legit, it's mint in box, and you open it up and it's like, what is this? Or it is the thing that it's supposed to be, but it's damaged.
Yeah.
There's a great video from a wrestler named Zack Ryder, who's a huge toy collector.
Yeah.
And he paid lots of money, thousands maybe, for a vintage AWA Remco ring. And this thing is like made of wood and canvas. It's not like it's not like a regular plastic mass-produced thing. And he opened it up and he was so excited, like, oh my God, vintage Remco ring. And it's torn. it got torn somehow, like
Oh,
in the
no.
thing, just from
Yeah.
years of cocoon or maybe in the factory. And he's
Right.
trying to like keep his enthusiasm up because he's doing a YouTube video,
Yeah.
and this is supposed to be exciting. And he's getting more real as the minutes go by because you can lie, you can convince a lot of people for a while.
Right.
And by the end of the video, he's like, oh, it's
Oh.
torn. Because it's that same thing, right? That whole I know. Well, now
Yeah.
you know that it's damaged, that it's
Right.
not mint, that it's not perfect.
Forever unclean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've felt that too as well. Like if I have something, especially if I've bought a vintage toy, mint on card, but the card was mangled.
Yeah.
A lot of my stuff that looks brand new, it sort of is because I got it years ago on eBay from people going, well, you know, the figure is fine, but the bubble's smashed, the card is torn, it's ripped up, it's, you know, it's in really nasty shape. So I get it for cheap and tear it open, throw the package away. It's garbage anyway, and you got a nice figure. But when that falls off the shelf and you find like a little white piece and you're like, where does this go?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
leg is loose and you're like,
Oh no.
no, because it was so perfect.
Yeah, it was pristine.
It still looks fantastic, but there's that little,
It just tugs at you a little bit, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, in my mind, that Dagobah playset, the foam for the quicksand is perfect.
Oh.
Pristine. But of course, if I ever open it, just like everybody else who ever had that playset, the minute you touch that foam, it's just going to disintegrate and turn into dust.
Would you ever open it?
I don't know. I've had it forever and it's just sitting in my closet and I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes I want to peer into it and I'm like, should I open this?
X-ray
But
it.
like, yeah.
There's
I don't know.
somebody, I remember somebody taking a mail away G.I. Joe figure. I forget what it was, like a Cobra Commander or something like that.
Yeah.
These things didn't come in nice fancy boxes. They came in like little tiny brown cardboard mailers with a Hasbro sticker on it and your address on it.
Yeah.
So, man, this guy was a hardcore collector even as a child because
Wow.
he didn't open it. Like, I'm assuming he maybe got a couple and he had one to enjoy. I remember getting 2 mail-away Sergeant Slaughters because I loved the first one so much, and he wasn't just a Joe, he was a wrestler. So he was mauling and a slaughter cannon and cobra clutching everybody. So as he was like degrading, you know, the paint coming off, joints loose, I was like, I gotta get another one of these, like just because maybe, you know, one of my first display pieces, just to have him or to use him when this one falls apart. So yeah, I'd open the mailer box and he'd be sitting there, you know, ready to tag in when the first one was done.
Oh yeah.
But this dude just didn't even open the mailer box. He wanted like, cause I know, right? Mint in mailer box, like no art on it, no nothing, just cardboard box. And he took it like to his work, I think, and X-rayed it to make sure it was like there was a figure in there.
Yeah.
So you couldn't tell exactly what figure, but you could see the outline of a 3 3/4 G.I. Joe in there.
That's amazing.
Like, what? X-raying your figure?
After all these years, he just had to know.
Wouldn't it be funny if the X-ray was super clean and it was like, I don't know, like what's a crappy G.I. Joe figure? Actually, they all rule. I want to be careful about who I name here, but a Dreadnought, you know, like, it's not who you thought it was. But yeah, that's pretty extreme. What kind of stuff are you getting these days? I'm just taking a look around your room right now. I don't know if it'll be cut off in the final shot, but one of the coolest things I think you have is the Jaws set there with the boat and Quint.
Yeah, and basically, and that one's one that is worth like quite a bit of money now because they only made it for a little bit. The McFarlane Toys Orca playset that is $300 Canadian or something goes for now. But I luckily when it came out bought it.
Did you ever open it?
I did. So I did take it out once and displayed it for a while. But I kept all the pieces of the box and then put it back in.
Yeah. And that's a really nice display thing to keep in box because it's got a giant window.
Yeah.
And you can actually get to enjoy it, maybe even a little bit more because the logo is there.
Yeah.
You know, the logo is such an important part. That's why I put they're called shelf talkers up all over the toy museum, because it's not just about the toy, it's the synergy of everything. And when you see that logo in that font with those colors.
Oh yeah.
You know, same goes for the Jaws logo and the artwork all around it. I'm just glad it didn't break on you, because McFarlane, I don't know. There's a certain way to pronounce it. I've always pronounced it McFarlane, and I always will.
Yeah.
And I've always pronounced it Nika, and I always will.
And I was just going to say, and the other stuff I get is a lot of the NECA, the NECA, because they do like the line of Gremlins, and I love Gremlins, so I've got everything that they've put out, Gremlins I buy, and they've been doing a lot of awesome horror stuff. Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode from the last Halloween is one of the ones I just got recently, and it's awesome.
Did you ever have any Gremlin stuff growing up? Because you're a big Gremlins fan.
Yeah. So I had like a lot of the figures that were like just the PVC plastic, or like the bendy Gremlins. And then a couple of the stuffed ones, and like those are still in a box somewhere. The gizmo that when you would shake, you go, you would like make a bunch of noise, but it's all like matted fur now because it's 30 years old. So it's
wash them.
Yeah. Just throw them in there, and I'll get about 15 coming out.
What the?
That'll be perfect.
Yeah, just don't feed them after midnight. Remember?
Yeah. That's true. So that's most of the stuff. Especially any of the old like movie franchises that I love that haven't had very much merch. Especially now that there are people like NECA or Nika who are doing licenses.
I like setting jerk traps, so I call them Nika.
There are licenses like where you can now buy an action figure from an R-rated movie that for a long time you couldn't. Yeah. That when we were growing up, like I had a RoboCop toy when I was 7. Yeah. So like you used to be able to. And then there was a long period where like there just wasn't anything. Yeah,
there was like the only way you were getting movie merch was if there was a cartoon associated with the movie, right, which might have been not the best cartoon, or totally like this shouldn't be a cartoon. Rambo comes to mind. Like I love the Force of Freedom. Those are awesome toys, but we didn't get Rambo First Blood Part 2 toys. We got Rambo Force of Freedom toys. And that RoboCop you're remembering is probably RoboCop and the Ultra Police by Kenner, right? Which was a cartoon. It's not, I mean, they made a movie, but that was their way around it. I always wanted Aliens toys growing up. I wish there had been a horrible Aliens cartoon so that we could have gotten the Marines and all the aliens. We did in the 90s get the Kenner Aliens toy line. No cartoon with it, but that's, if it had only been like 6, 7, 8 years before, that would have been one of my like ultimate favorite toy lines of the 80s.
How was that never a cartoon show, you wonder? Somebody somewhere must have been like pitching that all across town, and like somehow they just never got it greenlit. Aliens. Like a show about Newt, like just running around and hanging out.
Oh, you're onto something here. Yeah, like what do you want? It's a kid. Yeah. You know, little kids will love this kid. You know, she's trying to survive. It could have been set during Hadley Hope's
there would be the one xenomorph who like she befriended, who was like the good xenomorph, you know.
Trademark this stuff. This is what would this be called? Because you know, Rambo Force of Freedom, RoboCop and the Ultra Police, Aliens.
It would be like, yeah, I don't know, Aliens Newt's Escape or something. Like it would have to be something like I don't know,
Newt's Wonderland or something like that.
Yeah,
but that's pretty much what they would have to do with it, I think. What are some other movies that, like, when I think of movies that don't have enough merch, first one that comes to mind is The Thing. Not that I necessarily want that stuff. Like, you know, McFarlane made some of that stuff, and it was just like that spider head. But I always wanted like a decent R.J. McCready figure because, like, you know, Kurt Russell's the man. Oh, yeah. So not enough. Specifically RJ and the other guys, you know, Childs and all that stuff, Windows, merch in the world. But what are some movies that you wish there was more merch for?
As you know, one of the things, you know, I love Jurassic Park, and there is like a lot of Jurassic merch, but half of the Jurassic toys are not actually like movie accurate toys.
Yeah, rights issues.
all of the dinosaurs you can buy up until Jurassic World were just kind of like generic dinosaurs. Even in the 90s, I had like a gigantic 3-foot T-Rex. That's one of my favorite toys of all time, but it wasn't painted like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't look like that. And when they made the horrible action figures of Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, like, they look nothing like them.
Did
so
Malcolm have like the undone shirt and the slightly tinted sunglasses?
He didn't.
Oh, it's
and I just
for me,
remember,
then.
like, you know, I would love to see like somebody like a NECA step in and make a line of Jurassic that actually are the likeness of the people.
Yeah.
And the dinosaurs, though, like, to scale, to come with the figures, something like that. And then something that's never, one of my favorite movies that has never been made into any sort of toys is Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. And I think it would be awesome because some of those ghosts would make like really cool toys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too. I remember for the longest time wishing there was movie accurate Ghostbusters stuff because there was only the real Ghostbusters, which was awesome, but it was the real Ghostbusters toys and that's it. And they made so many different versions of the 4 guys, but they only did the original 4 with the proton packs one time. Yeah. So like after that, I remember never being able to find them again. So, I was able to track them all down on initial release, but I broke the wand on one of them and I was like, I need another Winston. Come on, reissue these guys. And they never did. And they got zanier and zanier. And I'm like, I just want the movie guys.
Right. Yeah. Give me those.
And I guess, they just couldn't get all of the likeness rights together until a few years ago when Mattel got it and they started churning that stuff out.
Yeah.
And then it was overload. It wasn't just here's your 4 Ghostbusters and here they are slimed and here they are with Stay Puffed marshmallow all over them.
I got Walter Peck right here, man. That just shows you how much Ghostbusters merch they ended up putting. Like, William Atherton as Walter Peck got a toy.
And it's huge. Look at the packaging.
Like,
now, does he include a thing?
Yeah, this man has no D. Like, so it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we've wanted it for so long, and then they just give you everything, like, the taxi driving ghoul, and you're like, oh, do I gotta get this? The guy's in the movie for 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's that Star Wars mentality of like every tiny little guy in the back of the cantina or in the back of Jabba's palace, he gets a figure, he gets a name, a bio, and a figure.
And I love mentioning that. What they do now with Star Wars is they really hype up the figures before the movie comes out, and then we find out when we see the movie that the character either got cut or is in it for too short. Like Constable Zuvio in The Force Awakens, there was like 8 toys of the guy. He's not in it. And then BB-9E, they made so much merch for, was in Last Jedi for about 3 minutes combined.
Yeah, and Phasma.
Phasma's the huge one.
I guess in a sense they did totally recreate the Boba Fett thing with Phasma because blink and you miss her. I mean, she's really cool for the 7 seconds she's in the movie or whatever it is. And I guess Kerry Russell has a new, they just put that new figure out that you saw the other day. Yeah. And, excitement is high, but nah, I'm out.
Less than 10 minutes, we'll see.
I'm tapping out. Like, you fool me 8 times, shame on me.
Yeah.
Is there like any big thing, not necessarily like, size big, but like a holy grail type of thing that you have never been able to get and you're still looking for?
There's like countless of the Star Wars things, right? Like, if you could get the old vintage Millennium Falcon in the box, without, I've got like a bunch of the old Falcons, but they're all in various states of disrepair or falling apart, or like
so they're screen accurate,
have been crayoned all over.
Screen accurate, then, right?
that's mostly the kind of stuff, or because I do love Gremlins, to find any of the old Gremlin stuff that's actually like mint is still something I check every once in a while.
Did you ever have the giant stripe? I
did.
You did?
Yeah, I had like a lot of the stuff, but it was so well used that even those plastic bendy guys I played with so much that like the paint just fell off. So now it's just like a green blob, you know what I mean?
And the problem with that stuff, unfortunately, the Gremlins license went to LJN, Galoob, and that stuff was not durable. Like,
No.
you know, the Joe stuff, the Transformer stuff has lasted this long because Hasbro built it to last. But like anytime I see Galoob, I just go, oh no, that's unfortunate.
Even when you see some of the ones that they're like, you know, mint on card, and it's like the plastic window is so discolored you can barely even tell there's a figure in there anymore.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, and then you're like looking at the figure and it's kind of rotting at the edges because it was just bad material.
What about the sail barge? Is that something that's on your radar?
Well, yeah. I was gonna say, man, when I went to Celebration and saw, you know, the gigantic, the one that they just released that
it's like
Kevin
6 feet
Feige
long.
Kevin Feige bought 10 of,
Oh,
whatever
God.
it was. He was one of the guys who like made sure that actually happened, and you just see it.
So they
you see
needed
it-
5,000 backers. I'm buying 10 of them.
he bought like I don't know, it might have been hundreds, but they said that Kevin Feige from Marvel
Probably.
like spent a ton of money to make sure that that toy got built.
Wow.
And that's one of those things that, like, when I saw it in person and you see the monstrosity that is the box, and then a vendor had the actual thing out of the box, and you're just like, this is incredible,
Yeah.
but it's so expensive. It's like you got to mortgage a house to own this thing. Now, after the people who got in on the pre-order, you know, paid still an arm and a leg.
Yeah. It's like I've only seen pictures of it. I haven't seen it in person yet, but it's basically the Star Wars version of the USS Flag.
Right. And I was going to say, yeah.
It's not a toy. It's not a vehicle. It's a diorama. It's a table. It's what you
that takes
put all your
almost-
stuff on.
Yeah. When I went into your toy museum, you're like, okay, look out, there's this thing in the center, and I'm like, holy crap, the flag is just, yeah, it's basically needs its own room.
Do you know if the sail barge moves? Did they put it on wheels?
I think it does have some sort of mechanism. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. When I saw it, it was just in a big glass case. Like, they didn't want anybody to touch it, obviously.
Yeah. Man, it should, because it's a boat, right? Boat's got a sail. And since I made the custom under part of my flag with the wheels and stuff, it doesn't sail very far in this room. But still being able to move it, it's like, whoa. You
Makes
got
it much
to...
more convenient.
Big isn't enough. It's got to move. It's kind of like that G.I. Joe Defiant. I believe it moves too, which to its detriment, I think it's, you know, so countless number of those have crumbled under their own weight. Can't support its own weight because it's on some sort of wheel system. But what's like, in terms of like the most recent giant thing, has anything caught your eye that's like within reach? I mean, the sail barge, obviously not, but something that's like you bite your knuckle, you know, you maybe skip a few, you know, movies or Blu-rays. And you're like, yeah, I could make this thing work.
Not, as I say, a lot of the stuff that I've really wanted has been mostly within reach. I really had to like stop myself because I wanted it, but like the money wasn't in the cards. Was the Transformers Optimus Prime Ghostbusters that they had?
Ecto, yeah.
Yeah, the Ecto. It was at Fan Expo and it was $200. And I was like, I want it. I'm like, but I can't. But I need it. But so that's one of those ones that like I didn't get. And then I was like kicking myself. Of course, the day that Fan Expo ended, I was like, why didn't I buy that? Why did I not get that? So
You're gonna feel, especially
every once in a while, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, $200 would have been a steal. What was I thinking? Why didn't I wait in line and get that? So that's one of the ones that like, you know, a little bit of I should have got for that.
And you're gonna feel especially bad when in the movie a big white truck transforms and he's in the movie. Maybe
You never know.
that'll be crazy because they're all crossover crazy right now.
Yeah, it's true. Lots of crossovers in the cards. You never know. Maybe. And then they'll reissue that and it won't be $200 anymore. It'll be $75.
And like the other thing I want to ask you about is those reaction. Is it reaction? I think they're called Super 7 reaction figures. So they're designed to look like the old Star Wars toys. You know, no articulation, no real sculpting detail.
Right.
A card of what it would have looked like back then, and they've done everything. They got Back to the Future, Terminator, everything. Do you have any of those, and what do you think of those?
Yeah, well, so I really dug those just because they have that awesome vintage look to them, right? And for those, they did a lot of licenses that they never had.
Yeah,
So
Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've got like a Snake Plissken over there.
Yeah.
and I did buy like the whole set of Gremlins, Jaws, Breaking Bad. I got Fifth Element, Terminator 2, and some other, and the Firefly ones. So like, I think those were cool. And, you know, giving that vintage look that reminds you of childhood, but yet being something from a little bit later in life. I think like that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
And because half the time when I buy half these toys anyway, I'm probably not going to open them. They're more for display purposes. So something like that explicitly where I'm like, I'm never going to open this anyway.
Yeah.
It just looks so pretty on the card. And, you know, like the Jaws ones, the artwork for just the card was so great. And to finally have Quint, Hooper, and all those guys, it was just awesome.
You just imagine, like, that stuff never existed when we were kids, but like kids today can recreate Jaws. You know, like they can have the boat and they can have the little figure. Smile, you son of a... Hey, Tommy, watch your language.
What are you doing down there?
It's not me, Dad. It's Roy Scheider. Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah, it's especially because, man, when I was growing up, like I said, I was into Ninja Turtles and would literally have sleepovers, and all me and my friends would do was we would make stop motion animations with my Ninja Turtles because I had, you know, video camera that would take a 1-second shot or whatever. And we would recreate movies, but it would just be the turtles. So it would be like, you know, the climax from Predator, but it's Leonardo and Donatello rather than, you know, Dutch and the Predator. And nowadays kids can actually just go out and they'd be like, oh, I'll take this Predator and I'll grab this guy and then I'll just make my own scene. And they can pretty much do it all because they have better access to those kind of figures.
It's kind of interesting. I hear from so many people talk about how it cultivated creativity having these toys, and it was the stuff that you didn't have that you had to come up with and fill in the blanks and fill in the spaces. And these days it's like you imagine it, it's there, and even if it hasn't been mass produced by the hundreds of thousands, then you 3D print it.
Yeah,
right? Like I remember basically, you know, the prehistoric version of a 3D printer was plasticine. Like if I couldn't get it and I couldn't afford it, I plasticined it. Yeah. And I had tons of like plasticine toys, which you could damage, right? You could blow holes through Transformers if they were plasticine and, you know, blow their arms off and stuff like that. So I wonder sometimes if having everything that your heart desires might lead to certain issues with, you know, not being able to roll with the punches,
right?
Not being able to, like, just having that irritant, that whole, oh, it bugs me so much. And maybe that's why so many of us have that little burr, you know, that's like, oh, that bothers me, you know, because you get too much that your heart desires. So then when that one time when something goes awry, you know, you can't fix a bent card on a mint on card action figure with plasticine or a 3D printer. Yeah,
you had to get a lot more creative and like work with what you got to sort of make that stuff the way you wanted it. And that, that ingenuity, that invention has kind of been lost a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So what's, not that I really care, I mean, but I get asked this question a lot, so I asked it a lot. It's apparently something people are interested in. Talking about value, I would assume your Mint in Box Ewok Village is one of the most valuable pieces, like in terms of toy collecting memorabilia you have. Any other stuff? Jaws, you mentioned.
Yeah, so the Jaws is worth some money. I do have a bunch of like mid-range Star Wars stuff that is on card, never opened from back in the day.
Oh, cool.
But
how's that stuff looking? Like, because I see them at conventions, the bubbles are usually yellowed.
Yeah, they are slightly discolored, and you know, it was just the materials they used.
It wasn't meant to be kept mint on card. I mean,
but you know, I've never paid to have them graded, but there are some that you see like, you know, on eBay. A few of them go for $500-600, depending on the figure. But I haven't ever decided to try and sell any of that or add it up. But I got like a box full of like 20 various ones from Star Wars to Jedi that are still on card and are pretty decent.
Yeah, and you're still really into the new Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of new Star Wars merch too.
Yeah, as I say, I love like the Black Series, and even
amazing.
Even they're doing so many great old school figures that never came out, right? That now, you know, I can get the Empire stuff that they're doing, and all that stuff is just so good. So I'm really into that, and I am looking forward to the new stuff like the Rise of Skywalker Black Series and the Mandalorian stuff. If it's as good as I'm hoping, like I just got to get it all.
Yeah, I don't have much of the Black Series. Two of them actually. Tony from Analog Toys sent me a Stormtrooper, and then
Nice.
I just recently got Sand Trooper too. This stuff looks incredible, and even like it's out of my budget. You know, I wish I could get all of the original trilogy Black Series. It's one of those things where, like, if I could go back, I might pass on all the, you know, smaller vintage collection stuff just so that I could focus on that. But, you know, you got to pick one or the other. You can't always just
Yeah, it's true.
get everything. Ironic for me in this room, saying you can't get everything.
Can't get a massive amount. Everybody's going, he has it all.
But I don't have everything. I really don't. Like, I've just kind of spread it out to give that illusion.
Yeah. It seems pretty complete whenever I take a look at it, man.
But the Black Series is something a lot of people are just sitting back, and even if they don't want to collect Star Wars Black Series, they're like, what's his name in Raiders of the Lost Ark? They're like, oh, G.I. Joe. Do that with G.I. Joe or anything else, right? X-Men.
Yeah.
He-Man. Like, so many toy lines, but especially G.I. Joe as a Black Series would blow my mind.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you think of Joe growing up?
I have to say, I was more into the toys, and I was into the show for a little bit, but I certainly loved playing with the toys. And I was always into, like, Cobra Commander and the bad guys more than I was the good guys when it came to G.I. Joe.
Yeah, and Transformers?
Yeah, I loved Transformers as a kid. So I had so many of the old, you know, Prime, Unicron, Starscream, all that stuff, and just loved it.
Unicron? You had that?
The monster, the big giant thing? Yeah.
Was that Unicron or Triptychon?
I can't remember, man.
Okay. Yeah, there was never...
I'm not as up on it anymore as I used to be.
There was never a Unicron in the 80s. There was a prototype released, which you got to Google sometime, the 80s Unicron prototype. I showed it to my wife one day, and she was like, is that a joke? I'm like, no, it's not a joke. It looks like a basketball with a head and arms and feet.
Nice.
It's just absolutely terrible. But what about like some of the other obscure stuff of the 80s? Like I love the stuff that failed just as much as I love the stuff that was big hits, like Silverhawks, Centurions, Visionaries, Cops. I'm always bringing this stuff up to people, and they're like,
I used to collect a bunch of Cops. So Cops was like I used to love that show and had a bunch of the toys as well. So that's definitely one. And like I mentioned earlier, like Rock Lords, I was super into for a while.
Oh, yeah. Was that Rock Lords was part of GoBots, right?
Yeah, it was like a
spin-off
offshoot of GoBots or whatever.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to be getting a GoBots movie?
We might as well. Come on, there's going to be some people who probably have fond memories like I do.
I think the biggest thing holding back a GoBots movie is that I believe Hasbro owns it. Like they bought it in the 90s.
So we got to wait till Transformers movies bottom out and they have nowhere to go.
Well, it's like, they've always been like, even though they came out the year before Transformers, they've always, like, by a lot of fans, especially Transformers fans, look at it as like those knockoffs and that cheap, crappy imitation that came out a year before Transformers. They were certainly more affordable. They were like little Hot Wheels guys that could transform. Some of them, right? There were bigger ones too.
Yeah.
But like with how crossover crazy movies are these days, why not put a GoBots movie out and just make it seem like it's totally unrelated? And then in your post-credit scene, you know, like Gobatron or whatever their world is called is like going through space, and over there is Cybertron, right? Or maybe Unicron is munching on something in the background and just
guess what? Yeah, we're teeing up another Transformers. Here you go.
Because like I don't think people even. There's a lot of people I don't think who even care about the quality of the crossover. They just want the crossover.
Right.
It's like, we don't care. GoBots versus Transformers. Do it. You know, throw in Mask in there too.
It is one of those things where, yeah, on paper it just sounds so awesome, right? Like, oh, it's a crossover. It's a team up. We're going to get this fandom and this fandom and everybody's going to come. And then if they don't put the right effort into it, you never know.
Yeah. What are some of your least favorite toys or most disappointing toys that you remember getting?
Well,
Or even modern. I mean, there's a lot of disappointing stuff these days.
You can buy a lot of stuff and you're just like, oh, this isn't as cool as I thought it would be, or like the likeness sometimes aren't very good.
Yeah.
But that can happen depending, even on a line that has great likeness of somebody, then they put out another one that you're like, this is supposed to be
Mark
who? Right? So I don't have any major disappointments, especially because back in the day when I would get a toy of something I didn't like, because I would use it to make a bunch of stop motion animation movies, I would find a way to put that character into something. So even
Jaws gotta eat.
You know, I got a bunch of like Independence Day aliens when the first Independence Day came out.
Oh yeah.
And they're in like their endoskeleton suit or whatever, and you open it up, and those toys like should have been cooler, but just kind of weren't.
I remember seeing them for the first time at Toys R Us, and this was before the movie came out. This is before the trailer came out.
Yeah.
So, and this is like, I guess it was a few years. That was in the 90s, right? Independence Day. But still, like, still fresh in my memory walking those same aisles before they revamped everything and seeing Silverhawks and He-Man and G.I. Joe and Brave Star. So I'm walking those same aisles and like ID4. What is this? Like this, you know, turn the pockets inside out. Oh no, this looks like it's going to be the huge thing. So the packaging, the sculpting, this was next level stuff. And then exactly like you said, like after a few weeks of wanting these things, I'm like, hey.
Yeah, there's just nothing to it.
No lasting power.
No, and so those ended up being like the bad guys that the turtles would have to fight or something when I would make some movies and whatever. But yeah, there are a lot of toys that even nowadays you see like some line where you think the toys are going to be more awesome than they are. So especially the low end stuff. So like I loved the new Godzilla movie, which not very many people did, and NECA did a line which are really nice. But then there are like the at Walmart for like the 8-year-olds, and all of those toys are kind of terrible. So you're like looking at Rodan and you're like, they didn't even try and paint this. It's just like a giant piece of plastic that happens to look a little bit like this pterodactyl creature, and like there's nothing. It does nothing. It's just a giant piece of plastic, and it's $29.99 because they slapped it in a box that said Godzilla King of the Monsters. Yeah. So that was a movie that like and we didn't get those figures up here for some reason, but when I went to the States, I was like, oh my God, they got Godzilla King of the Monsters toys like out of Walmart. And then I was like, I don't want to buy any of these because they're all garbage.
Yeah. Do you remember the Tron Legacy toys?
I do. I had a couple of them.
What went wrong?
Yeah,
like that, you know, I know a lot of people didn't enjoy the movie or it didn't, you know, make a lot of money. I loved it. It was my Star Wars New Hope, you know, spiritual experience. It's just, it blew me away. And I got a whole bunch of the toys and I like them, but I would like them a lot better if they were made by Hasbro or Mattel. Like what Spin Masters, I think, made them. They are the like, not the best quality, and it's Disney. Like Disney couldn't hire someone better to do these. The light up gimmick is great on them, but they're just such corner cutting, cheap looking things. And then you got the likeness issues again, because that's my biggest deal. The biggest issue with movie toys. It's when the actors won't sign away the likeness rights. They can't come to an agreement. Like it ruins the figure. Why bother making it if it doesn't look like the guy?
Right. And those Tron ones, the only saving grace is if the room was dark and you just light it up, like the lights looked awesome. Mm-hmm. But you're right, the actual like build quality and everything else about it was not good.
Yeah, and the vehicles too. I mean, sometimes when I'm looking at these things, I'm imagining what would this be like if I had this when I was 8 or 10, and it looks cool on a shelf, but I'm looking at it and, you know, just even in my hands, I'm thinking, this just feels so cheap. Like it's so bendy and light and cheap and fragile, and then something breaks.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, okay. You're looking for that synergy, right? For me, it's always been about synergy. It's the reason I think we love the toys is because we love the show and we love the comic and we love the commercials too. And a lot of people just totally forget one of those, and they think, it was all about the one thing. But you take one piece out and everything else doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And, there's a lot of people who they say, oh, those old 80s cartoons, they're terrible. You can't watch them today. I don't think they really give them a decent shot. Watching 5 minutes of a cartoon, it's not giving the show a fair shake. I mean, who's going to sit down and watch it for, 10 episodes or something? Like, not too many people are going to invest that much time, but like a show like He-Man, yeah, I totally get it. You put that on, you watch 5 minutes and you go, ooh, this hasn't aged well. You watch 15 episodes,
right,
and you start to feel really good about yourself and the world and other people.
And that's like back then, even though it was like they would show random episodes after school or like on a Saturday morning, they did still really think out like overall arcs, and the more that you watch, the more you got out of it. Mm-hmm. So it is one of those things where, lots of times people will be like, oh, I bought the Masters of the Universe season 1 and I threw it on and I watched one episode and I couldn't handle it anymore. And it's like, yeah, well, you needed to watch more before you start to re-acclimatize to like what that show is, and you get more out of it the more you put in. But like you said, it's also something that you got to space out a little bit. So you watch, 3 a night or something, rather than I'm going to binge all 95 episodes of this thing from 1985, right?
Well, not even like 3 a night. That'd be awesome. But I've been spacing my stuff out even more, where I'll like maybe watch one He-Man a week, or one Brave Star a week, because like if I try to watch more of them, I just kind of get fatigue with anything, right? Like any show, new show, old show, it doesn't matter. You get this like entertainment fatigue, and you're just not in it anymore. But that's how it was originally designed. It came out once a week. Sometimes it was on 5 days a week. But then you got a 2-day break from it, right?
Right.
Like this whole concept of binging didn't exist back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I think if it did, people wouldn't be that passionate. They just burn out on everything.
Yeah.
I wonder in 20, 30 years, are people going to be this passionate who grew up on Stranger Things or any other new property that they've binged and burned out on?
Right.
You can revisit it and really love it for a weekend or two. Is it going to last?
It is totally true, because there are Netflix shows that I love, but I literally watched the entire show the day it comes out. So like, yeah, for one day a year, that show like means something to me, and it's not until the next day the next year that I even think about it again.
Yep, that happened with Cobra Kai season 2. So season 1, we stretched it out. We loved it. We were so passionate about it. I did a bunch of videos, on it.
Yeah.
We talked about it on Armchair Directors. It just captured our imagination. Wow, this is amazing. What a beautiful thing they've done here. More, right? So season 2 comes out. Yay! Binged it in one weekend. It was good. It was what it was. And I haven't really thought much about it since that weekend. And that's a shame. Like, looking back, I should have enjoyed 2 or 3, that weekend. It's hard to just go one a day, right? 5 days and then take a 2-day break, or even wait, every weekend. But, maybe a little bit of self-discipline will make things last a little longer and prevent burnout.
Burnout. I think that is one of those things, and it'll be interesting to see when Disney Plus is going to release each of their episodes one a week, so that you can't, if you're watching as it comes out, you can't just binge it.
Yeah.
And that is something that we'll see how people like it, because Cobra Kai is one of those great examples, because season 2 I did plow through and I didn't like it as much as season 1. And then now I'm like, well, maybe I should go back and check it out again and actually space it out so I can enjoy it more. And that's something, you were asking about modern toys that I'm looking forward to. The NECA Karate Kid series that they just did, like the Johnny and Daniel like in clothing from the tournament, just came out in the States. I got to get those.
Oh, cool. Do you remember the Remco Karate Kid toys?
A little bit.
So I'm not sure if those were, because we were talking about it, a movie only, even though Karate Kid wasn't an adult movie, but R-rated movie, but there was a Karate Kid cartoon. Do you remember that?
Not hardly at all. As I say, I could say yes, but I'd be lying. No, I don't remember.
Everything's on YouTube.
Yeah.
The theme song, Karate Kid, do, 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 and then Miyagi is like doing his karate and fighting the forces of evil.
Yeah.
So it was like your typical 80s cartoon, version of the movie. So I don't know if the Remco toys were based on the cartoon or the movie, but I remember Remco did a bunch of them, kind of like the A-Team looking figures,
Okay.
kind of squat looking, not the best articulation, but, still kind of cool that a movie got, a fairly decent toy line in the 80s when all other toys were being dominated by cartoons.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that would
Yeah,
be cool
maybe
if someone did like Remco style Cobra Kai new figures.
Yeah,
like
bring those out.
Creeds.
The retro vintage.
Oh man, retro seems to be really taking off, and I'm really happy about that. I wasn't at first. Like when I first saw the new He-Man retro style figures, I thought, why? Because you've got the classics and the super articulated, super detailed and posable. I'm like, why are we taking a step back? And then when I actually got some in my hands, I went, oh, because less is more.
Right. This is why. This feels like the stuff I used to love.
Yeah, it totally has the same feel to it, the look, and even recreating the old packaging. And I often say about toy collecting, it's about scratching an itch and it's about unfinished business. Mm-hmm. And so this stuff was intended to be opened and played with. So people should not kick themselves and go, why did I open it? It's like whenever someone says, oh, I had that figure, why did I open it? You opened it because you did what you're supposed to do. And you used it for what it was intended. It was a toy, and you were supposed to have fun and be creative and enjoy the character and create situations, and no wrongdoing whatsoever. But you still got that little bit of like, oh, why didn't I keep it? Well, now you can, right? Scratch that itch and get the retro reissue for $12 or whatever it is, $10. Stick it on your wall or, on a pegboard or something like that, and just don't open it. Enjoy it. And basically, now toy collectors get to have their cake and eat it too. They got to have their childhood experience, open it, play with it, and then in their adulthood, kind of go back in time, get it again, and this time, not going to open this one.
Now they can sleep at night and not be haunted by, why did I open that? The 8-year-old me was such an idiot.
And it's better not to open it because, like, if you do and it crumbles, like, oh no.
Yeah.
Look, but don't touch.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're at about an hour here, so I think we'll wrap it up now. But want to let everyone know about, in addition to what we do on Armchair Directors, we talk about movies and TV shows over on the Armchair Directors channel. You've also got your own solo channel. What brought on the name change from Crandall Reviews to CineMATTic Crandall?
I was just looking for something that sounded a little bit catchier and settled on that. And, most of the stuff I talk about is going to be movie related, even if it's steel books or Blu-ray hunting or toys. It's almost all movie related. So that was why.
Yeah, and that's the movie stuff, just in case people are curious, that I'm not going to be able to get out to, or not really my bag. You see all movies.
Yeah, pretty much all movies. And so right now I'm doing a whole series of, I just spent a week at the Toronto International Film Festival, which, I waited all year to take my vacation from my job to go to TIFF.
Also known as TIFF.
Yeah. For all those, yeah. Good old TIFF. But, that's one of those things where, I saw 30 movies there, so I'll eventually probably review all 30 of those. And half of them are big movies that are going to come out and that you should definitely see, and we'll probably talk about on Armchair Directors.
Like Joker.
And then the other half are ones that nobody's going to be lining up around the block to see, but maybe they should.
Yeah, exactly. And Joker was one of the ones you saw there, and you did a review on your channel.
Yeah.
Great review on that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that one too. So that'll be the next one that I...
Yeah. That people are going to go crazy for it. We'll see.
And any other toy related or collectible related stuff coming up on your channel?
Yeah, well, because all the new Star Wars stuff is coming out, I'm gonna buy it all and do videos on all that stuff. So certainly in the immediate future, I'm mostly thinking Star Wars for collectibles, but definitely Star Wars content coming up.
Awesome. Well, it's been awesome chatting toys, collectibles with you, especially since we never really bring it up during the
thanks, man. This has been a good time. It's been a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
And I do love all the toy stuff, and like I said, even though I've been to the toy museum, still watching the videos just make it all look so awesome.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing your collection one day too, especially that mint in box.
We'll crack it open and it'll turn out there's nothing inside it.
Dust. Dust and foam.
Yeah, that's it.
The plastic broke down, but the foam is perfect.
The foam is pristine. You can sell that on eBay for about $15.
All the Ewoks will be all old and crotchety, old gray teddy bears. But yeah, awesome chatting with you, everyone. Check out CineMATTic Crandall on YouTube, and also check out our movie reviews, Armchair Directors. Matt, thank you big time for joining me today. And until next time,
enjoy the show.
Nerd mistake.